The wind at Black Elk Peak was cruel that afternoon, thin, biting, and relentless. The kind that cut through wool and skin alike. But Amelia Carson didn't mind. She'd been climbing since dawn, her boots caked in frost, her breath fogging as she exhaled into the crisp mountain air. The solitude was her sanctuary. At her side, bounding through patches of snow with determined energy, was her golden retriever, Ranger. He was 6 years old, loyal, and far too smart for his own good. Together, they'd scaled countless ridges and trails across the Dakotas. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But this one was different. Amelia had returned to Black Elk Peak for the first time since her father's disappearance 3 years ago. A seasoned geologist, Thomas Carson, had been mapping fault lines when his radio went silent. They'd found his truck parked neatly at the base, but no trace of him up the mountain. Local search teams combed the area for weeks. Dogs, drones, everything. Nothing. Now Amelia was back. Not as a grieving daughter, but as a scientist retracing his path. "Almost there, boy," she murmured, adjusting her pack straps. The summit was close. She could see the old fire lookout tower, its roof sagging under years of storms and neglect. Ranger barked once, ears twitching. "You smell something?" she asked, but the wind drowned her words. When they reached the summit, Amelia expected a wave of relief. Instead, unease prickled under her skin. The place felt wrong, too quiet. No birds, no sound, but the wind's hollow whistle through the tower beams. Ranger's tail went rigid. He sniffed the air, then trotted toward the old tower, nails clicking on frozen stone. He stopped at the base of the metal stairs, whining low in his throat. "What is it, bud?" Amelia followed, flashlight in hand. Ranger pawed at the steps, then glanced back at her, his brown eyes urgent. "You want to go up?" He didn't wait for permission. He bolted upward, claws scraping, nose to the ground. Amelia sighed and followed, each creak of the rusted stairs echoing. Halfway up, the wind shifted. She caught a whiff of something, sweet, metallic. Her pulse quickened. Ranger had reached the landing. He barked once, then again sharp and insistent. Amelia's boots hit the top platform. The door to the lookout cabin hung half open, its hinges groaning. She clicked on her flashlight and stepped inside. Dust swirled in the beam, glinting like snowflakes. The place was stripped bare, just a broken table, a fallen chair, and footprints. Fresh ones. Leading to the far corner, her heart pounded. No one had been assigned to the tower in years. "Hello," her voice quavered slightly. "Anyone here?" "Nothing." Then Ranger growled, a deep, unfamiliar sound that made the hair rise on the back of her neck. He was staring at something beneath the window, a section of warped floorboards. Amelia knelt beside him. "What is it, boy?" Ranger began scratching, claws scraping wood. She leaned closer. There under his paw, a faint seam, a hidden hatch. Her breath hitched. She wedged the tip of her hiking knife into the crack and pried. The board lifted with a dry creak, revealing darkness beneath. A smell hit her, old, earthy, and faintly sour. She aimed her flashlight down. At first, she saw only the outline of a small wooden box. Then she saw what was beside it, a tattered piece of fabric. Faded green, and on that fabric, sewn into the corner, were the stitched initials, T.C. her father's. Amelia froze, the wind howling outside like some ancient warning. Ranger whimpered softly, nose pressed to the edge of the hole. She reached in with trembling fingers, pulled out the fabric. It was part of a jacket, the same field jacket her father had worn the day he vanished. Beneath it lay a small leather-bound notebook, water-stained and half-rotted. Her stomach turned. The air felt suddenly too thin. She flipped it open. The first few pages were smudged. The ink bled from years of moisture. But the last entry was still legible. "If anyone finds this, don't go beyond the summit. The stones are not what they seem." She stared, her mind spinning. Beyond the summit? What did that even mean? There was nothing beyond but rock and sky. Ranger barked again, louder this time, pacing near the door. He stopped, staring toward the edge of the cliff beyond the tower. His fur bristled. Amelia followed his gaze. Through the doorway, she could see a dark shape half buried in the snow about 30 feet away, something she hadn't noticed before. Her flashlight beam trembled as she stepped outside. The wind shrieked around her, tugging her hood, biting her cheeks. Ranger ran ahead, barking furiously now, circling the shape. When she reached it, she understood why. It wasn't just a rock, it was a door, a steel hatch, flush with the mountaintop, half concealed beneath ice. And carved into the metal, barely visible through the frost, was the same symbol she'd seen 1,000 times in her father's research notes. A triangle intersected by a vertical line. The sigil of the Black Elk Survey Project, the geological expedition her father had been leading when he vanished. Amelia stumbled back, pulse hammering. Ranger stood over the hatch, whining softly now, pawing at the frozen seam as if urging her to open it. Her flashlight flickered once, then went out. The mountain went dark, the wind whispering like voices in the cold, and Amelia realized, with bone-deep certainty, that she was not alone on that summit. The wind's howl was a living thing that night, whipping through the tower's frame, rattling the shutters, screaming against the metal of the hatch buried in the snow. Amelia crouched low, her flashlight dead in her hand, her pulse echoing in her ears. Ranger pressed close against her thigh, trembling slightly, not from cold, but from something else. Instinct, fear. Easy. "Boy," she whispered, fumbling in her pack for her spare light. When it flicked on, a weak yellow beam cut through the frost. The hatch was still there, frozen solid, rimmed with ice, the strange symbol half obscured by a layer of snow. But something else had changed. The footprints. She could see them now, faint impressions leading away from the hatch. Bare human feet, no boots, no shoes. Amelia swallowed hard. The prints trailed off toward the cliff edge, then vanished into the mist. "Okay," she muttered, steadying her breath. "No one's here. No one can be here." She knelt beside the hatch again, brushing away the snow. The metal beneath was ancient, cold to the touch. A corroded lock sat in the center, rusted shut. But beneath the oxidation, she could still make out faint engraving, BESP, subterranean entry, authorized personnel only. Her heart clenched. That was the Black Elk Survey Project, her father's last assignment. Amelia tried to lift it. Nothing, frozen solid. She pulled out a small hammer from her kit and tapped around the edges, trying to break the ice. Ranger barked suddenly, jerking her attention away. He stood by the edge of the tower platform, staring down the slope. His tail was straight, fur bristling. A low growl rolled from his throat. Amelia followed his gaze. Something moved in the tree line far below. A flicker of motion, too fast to be the wind. Her flashlight barely reached that far, but she could swear she saw someone, a figure, standing still, watching. Then it was gone. Her breath came fast now, forming thick clouds in the freezing air. She turned back toward the hatch, forcing logic to steady her nerves. Could have been an animal, she muttered. Or a trick of the light. But she didn't believe herself. Ranger whined again, padding closer, pressing his nose to her arm as if urging her away. "I know," she said softly. "I don't like it either." Still, she couldn't leave. Not now, not when she'd found the same insignia her father had been chasing before he vanished. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the small notebook she'd found earlier. The last page still burned in her mind. "Don't go beyond the summit. The stones are not what they seem." She turned back a few pages, skimming the half-legible writing. Notes about seismic readings, coordinates, and something else. Something circled 3 times in thick pencil. Vibration source detected beneath the peak. Unknown origin. The entries ended there. Amelia looked again at the hatch. Beneath the ice, a faint vibration pulsed, so faint she thought at first it was her imagination. But then Ranger's ears pricked, and he let out a low whine. The mountain was humming. By nightfall, the storm intensified. Snow fell in thick sheets, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Amelia took refuge inside the old lookout tower, sealing the warped door with her pack. She set up her small camp stove, its orange flame flickering weakly against the chill. Ranger curled by her side, his head resting on her boots. She kept the notebook on her lap. flipping through the brittle pages again. Between notes about sediment layers and temperature readings, one phrase caught her attention: faint, written in the margin as though added in haste. They told us not to dig deeper. Her skin crawled. She glanced out the frost-fogged window. The hatch was barely visible under a growing drift of snow. "They," she whispered. "Who's they?" The tower groaned in the wind. Ranger lifted his head suddenly, ears twitching. Then came the sound, soft at first, almost too faint to notice. A knock, 3 sharp raps against the metal door. Amelia froze. The tower was miles from any road, and she'd seen no other hikers all day. Her mind raced. Animal? Falling debris? Wind? The knocks came again, this time slower, heavier. Ranger began to growl, low and guttural. Amelia stood, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer. She edged toward the door, each step creaking. The wind outside screamed, shaking the frame. She pressed her ear to the cold metal. Nothing. Just the moan of the storm. She exhaled shakily. And then something scraped across the door from the outside. A long, dragging sound. Ranger barked furiously now. Teeth bared, Amelia stumbled back, heart hammering. She snatched up her knife, ready for... What, a wild animal? A stranger? But after several long, breathless seconds, the sound stopped. Silence. The storm's howl swallowed everything again. She waited a minute. 2. Then forced herself to breathe. "It's fine," she muttered. "It's just the wind. It's fine." She sat back down beside Ranger, hand resting on his head to calm them both. Eventually, exhaustion won. She drifted into a shallow, uneasy sleep, haunted by half-formed dreams of her father's voice echoing through the dark. She woke just before dawn. The storm had passed. The world outside glowed pale blue under the early light, every surface glittering with ice. The hatch was almost buried now. But something else caught her eye. Footprints, fresh ones, leading from the hatch to the tower door. And when she looked down at the threshold from the inside, she saw it. Smears of mud across the floor. Someone, or something, had been inside while she slept. Ranger barked sharply, then ran to the door, pawing it frantically. Amelia grabbed her gear, slinging her pack over her shoulders. Her instincts screamed to leave, to get off the mountain, but her father's notebook weighed heavy against her chest. She couldn't, not yet. She pushed open the door and stepped into the brittle morning air. The snow crunched under her boots as she approached the hatch again. Something had been done to it during the night. The ice was fractured, as if struck from the inside. Steam or vapor rose faintly from the cracks, and in the center the lock was broken. Ranger began to whine, backing away slowly, tail tucked low. Amelia crouched, shining her light into the opening. The hatch had been forced open about an inch, just enough for her to see darkness below. A shaft descending into the mountain itself. The hum was louder now, steady, rhythmic, almost mechanical. She glanced at Ranger. "You're not gonna like this," she whispered. Then she wedged her fingers beneath the edge and pulled. The hatch lifted with a metallic groan. A rush of warm, stale air hit her face, carrying the scent of earth and rust, and something else, something living. A dim light pulsed far below, orange and steady like a heartbeat. Amelia stared down into the depths, the breath freezing in her lungs. "Stay here," she told Ranger. Though she knew he wouldn't listen, she clipped her headlamp on, tightened the straps on her pack, and peered into the shaft. A rusted ladder descended into darkness. Her father's last words echoed in her mind. "Don't go beyond the summit," and yet, here she was. She swallowed, placed one boot on the first rung, and began to climb down. Ranger whined once more at the edge, then with a small bark of protest, jumped after her. The light from above grew smaller, swallowed by the mountain. The hum deepened, vibrating through the metal beneath her hands. When her boots finally hit the bottom, she turned her headlamp across the narrow passage. The walls weren't rock. They were smooth, carved, covered in symbols like the one on the hatch, and then she saw it, etched into the stone ahead. in jagged, hurried letters. "Help us, they never left," Ranger barked sharply, spinning toward the darkness deeper down the tunnel. From somewhere ahead, faint footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, approaching. Amelia froze, her heart in her throat, and light shaking in her trembling hand. Someone, or something, was waiting for her inside the mountain. The air inside the mountain was heavy, dense with the smell of damp earth and metal. Amelia's headlamp cast narrow slices of light along the tunnel, revealing walls that looked half natural, half carved, as though human hands had expanded what nature had begun. Ranger pressed close to her leg, ears pinned back, teeth bared in silent tension. His hackles rose each time the faint hum pulsed through the walls. It wasn't a mechanical sound exactly, more like a vibration that came from deep within the rock itself, steady as a heartbeat. The footsteps ahead stopped. "Hello?" Amelia called, her voice trembling despite herself. "Is someone there?" For a long moment there was only the echo of her own words. Then faintly a whisper came back, so soft she almost missed it. "Leave." Her blood ran cold. The tunnel ahead dipped into darkness. Her instincts screamed to turn back, to climb up that ladder and never return. But her father's notebook was clutched in her jacket, heavy against her heart. She swallowed hard. "Dad?" No answer. The silence stretched, then broke. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, a slow scrape echoed, the sound of metal dragging against stone. Ranger barked sharply, lunging a step forward, his leash jerking taut in her hand. Amelia took a single step deeper into the passage. Her beam caught a glint of something on the ground, an old flashlight half buried in dust. She picked it up and turned it over. On the side, nearly worn off, were engraved initials TC. Her throat closed. "Dad!" The flashlight's lens was cracked, its battery long dead, but its presence here confirmed what she'd feared. He had come this way. The air trembled again with that low vibration. The floor beneath her boots almost seemed to breathe. Ranger suddenly darted ahead, growling. "Ranger, wait!" She chased after him, the beam of her headlamp jerking wildly as the tunnel opened into a wider chamber. What she saw there made her stop cold. The walls were covered in carvings, thousands of them, spiraling patterns intertwined with unfamiliar symbols. In the center of the cavern stood a massive stone pillar, its surface slick and glistening as though wet. Embedded deep within it, faintly visible through the translucent mineral, was something that looked disturbingly like a hand, human. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Amelia's heart pounded. No way. She stepped closer, her fingers trembling as she reached out. The stone was warm to the touch, impossibly warm, as though something inside it still lived. And then a voice filled her head, not through her ears, but inside her skull. "You shouldn't have come here." She staggered back, gasping. The hum surged louder, vibrating through her bones. Ranger barked furiously, circling her, whining as though to pull her away. Amelia's vision blurred. For a heartbeat, the carvings on the walls seemed to shift, symbols writhing, rearranging themselves into something almost human. Faces. Then suddenly, silence. The hum stopped. The air went still. Amelia dropped to her knees, her flashlight clattering against the rock. She pressed a hand to her head, gasping. What is this place?" From somewhere deeper in the tunnels came the sound of movement, slow, steady footsteps approaching again. She whipped her light toward the sound. Out of the darkness stepped a man. He looked half frozen, his beard matted, clothes torn and filthy. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken, and for a split second Amelia thought she was seeing a ghost. Then he spoke. "Who are you?" His voice cracked like dry leaves. Amelia's knees nearly gave out. I'm Amelia Carson. My father, Thomas Carson, he disappeared up here 3 years ago. I think he was part of the survey." The man's expression changed instantly. "Carson," he whispered. "You're his daughter?" "Yes, you knew him." He stepped closer, his movements cautious but filled with urgency. "We worked together on the Black Elk project. My name's Dr. Eli Turner. I thought I thought I was the only one left. Her stomach turned cold. The only one left? What happened down here? Turner's eyes darted around the chamber, as though afraid the walls themselves were listening. We were studying seismic anomalies beneath the peak. Found this chamber, these carvings. At first we thought it was ancient tribal work, maybe ceremonial, but the instruments... He paused, swallowing hard. They showed energy signatures we couldn't explain. Vibrations, heat, electromagnetic flux, all from solid rock. Amelia felt dizzy. You mean this? This thing is alive? Turner hesitated. Alive, yes, but not how we understand life. He pointed toward the pillar. That's where it began. Your father wanted to open it, to see what was causing the readings. But after he touched it, his voice broke. What? Amelia demanded. Turner met her eyes. He changed. The air seemed to thicken around them. Amelia's pulse roared in her ears. What do you mean, changed? Turner looked away, voice hollow. He wasn't himself anymore. He started hearing voices. Said the mountain was calling to him. Then he disappeared into the lower tunnels. We sealed the hatch after that. Tried to get help, but every signal we sent out was scrambled. The others? His voice cracked. The others never made it out. Ranger growled low. Staring past Turner into the dark tunnel beyond, Amelia turned her light in that direction and froze. A shadow moved against the far wall, tall, human-shaped, then another, and another. Figures were emerging from the darkness one by one, their outlines human but wrong. Too still, too quiet. Turner stumbled back. No, not again. What are they? Amelia whispered. They were my team, Turner said, voice shaking. They were the Black Elk survey. The figures stepped into the light. Their eyes reflected amber, their skin ashen and cracked like stone. Their mouths opened in perfect unison, and from them came a low, harmonic hum, the same vibration that had filled the tunnels. Ranger barked furiously, backing up against Amelia's legs. The sound grew louder, pressing against her chest until she could barely breathe. Turner shouted over it, "Run! We can't stay here!" Amelia turned, but before she could move, one of the creatures reached out. Its hand brushed her arm, cold, rough, almost rock-like, and in that instant her mind flooded with images, a room filled with light. Her father standing before the pillar, his hands pressed against the stone, his eyes glowing faintly orange. "The mountain remembers," he had said, "and it wants us back." Amelia screamed and yanked free. The vision shattered. She stumbled backward as Turner grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the exit tunnel. The humming grew deafening now, shaking dust from the ceiling. They ran. Ranger sprinted ahead, barking furiously, his tail disappearing up the ladder shaft. Amelia's lungs burned. The walls pulsed faintly, glowing with the same orange light as the eyes of the figures below. They reached the base of the ladder. Turner shoved her toward it. "Go! I'll hold them off!" "No, come with me." He smiled faintly, the first trace of warmth in his face. "Your father said someone would come. Now I know he meant you." Before she could protest, he shoved her upward. She climbed fast, every muscle screaming, the echo of the hum chasing her up the shaft. When she burst out onto the summit, the dawn light nearly blinded her. She dragged herself out of the hatch, gasping, and Ranger was there instantly, whining, licking her hands. Below her, the mountain rumbled, deep, guttural, alive. The hatch glowed faintly orange through the ice. "Turner," she shouted down. "Come on!" No response, only that same growing vibration, pulsing through the ground like a living heartbeat. Then slowly, the hatch began to close on its own. Amelia screamed and ran forward, trying to wedge her hands beneath it, but the metal was too heavy. Ranger barked frantically beside her. The hum built to a crescendo, shaking the entire peak. She stumbled back, clutching her head, as the world seemed to tilt. The snow around the hatch cracked, sending small avalanches cascading down the slopes. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sound stopped. Silence. The hatch lay sealed once more, its surface smooth, the frost already reforming over it. Amelia collapsed to her knees, chest heaving. Ranger pressed against her side, whimpering softly. "Dad!" she whispered, tears freezing on her lashes. "What did you find down there?" "Far below, Unseen in the dark tunnels, faint orange light continued to pulse, steady and rhythmic, like the slow beating of a sleeping heart. And though the wind howled across the summit, Amelia could have sworn she still heard her father's voice echoing from the depths. "Don't go beyond the summit." The sun barely crested the ridge when Amelia began her descent from Black Elk Peak. The air was thin, and her muscles screamed from the climb and the adrenaline that hadn't yet left her bloodstream. She stopped often, turning back toward the summit as if expecting the hatch to open again. It didn't. Ranger padded silently beside her, his head low, tail stiff. He kept glancing over his shoulder, ears twitching at sounds only he could hear. The mountain was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds were gone. Amelia's hands shook as she pulled her phone from her pocket. No signal, not even a flicker of service. The tower's GPS, usually reliable, showed her standing in an empty gray void where the peak should have been. "Great," she muttered. "Perfect time for a blackout zone." She quickened her pace, boots crunching through the frost. Every few minutes she glanced down at the old notebook stuffed inside her jacket. Its pages felt like they were burning against her chest. Her father had been down there. Turner too. The thought that one might still be alive, that both might not be human anymore, gnawed at her sanity. By the time she reached the base trail, the day had fully broken. The ranger station sat ahead, its old green roof glistening with melting snow. Relief hit her like a wave. Civilization, maybe answers. But as she approached, something felt off. The door was ajar, creaking in the wind. A fresh layer of snow dusted the steps, undisturbed except for a single set of footprints leading out. Ranger growled. Low and uncertain, Amelia crouched beside him, whispering, "Stay sharp." She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The station was dark, except for the pale light filtering through frosted windows. Papers littered the floor, maps, weather reports, handwritten notes. A coffee mug lay shattered near the desk, its contents frozen mid-spill. "Hello?" she called. "Anyone here?" No answer, then a faint beep. She turned toward the sound. The old radio on the desk was still on, the power light flickering. Static filled the air. She twisted the dial, hoping for a channel. Amelia Carson. "Not alone. Repeat. Not alone." She froze. "Hello? This is Amelia Carson. Who is this?" Static. Then the voice again, clearer now. Male, familiar. "Leah, if you're hearing this, don't trust them." Her stomach dropped. "Dad?" "They're still here." The mountain static drowned the rest. She slammed her hand on the desk. "Dad, please, I need to find you." "Where are you?" "Nothing." The signal faded into dead air. Ranger barked sharply, spinning toward the doorway. Amelia looked up. A shadow moved outside, tall, human-shaped, passing between the trees. She grabbed her pack, shoving the notebook inside, and bolted out the door. "Hey, wait!" But when she reached the clearing, the figure was gone. Only tracks remained, bare footprints deep in the snow, leading toward the lower trail, the same kind she'd seen on the summit. Her pulse quickened. She followed. The tracks wound through the forest, weaving between pines heavy with frost. As she walked, the temperature dropped, the silence thickening around her until even her breathing sounded too loud. Then she saw it, an old sign half buried in snow. Black Elk Geological Outpost. Restricted. Access a narrow service road curved downhill beyond it, ending at a cluster of decaying metal structures half swallowed by the mountain. "Guess we found the old project site," she murmured. Ranger barked once in confirmation, then trotted ahead, nose to the ground. The facility gates were broken, hanging by a single hinge. The compound beyond was eerily intact. Several low buildings, a generator shack, a weather tower, all half buried in snowdrifts. Inside the first building, rows of rusted equipment lined the walls. Old data screens, broken terminals, lab benches covered in dust. Amelia brushed off a plaque on the wall. Black Elk Survey Project, 1997-2019, mapping the unseen. Her breath hitched. This was it. Her father's workplace. She moved deeper into the room. A corkboard still hung near the far wall, pinned with faded photographs, teams of smiling scientists, excavation maps, seismic readings. She spotted him immediately. Thomas Carson, her father. Smiling, arm around Eli Turner, she reached out, tracing the photo's edge. "You were right here," she whispered. Behind her, a faint click. Amelia spun. The lights flickered. One of the old computers hummed to life, its monitor glowing weakly blue. Lines of text appeared on screen, ancient code, half-corrupted, accessing sub-level files. Project Core Sleeper. Her brow furrowed. Core Sleeper? More text scrolled across. Subterranean entity discovered 2018. Composition unknown. Semi-organic crystalline mass. Behavior, rhythmic emission consistent with bioelectric pulse. Directive, do not engage physical contact. Status, contained beneath summit chamber. 3. She felt the blood drain from her face. That thing, the pillar she touched, it wasn't just a geological formation. It was alive, and her father had touched it. Ranger whined behind her, pawing at the doorway. "Yeah, I know, boy. We shouldn't stay long." But then the monitor flickered again, showing a new message, typed live, as though someone was responding in real time. "Hello, Amelia." Her breath caught. "What the hell? We've been waiting." She stumbled back, slamming the monitor off. The power light went dark, but the screen stayed faintly lit, words bleeding through even with no electricity. "You heard his voice, didn't you? He never left. None of us did." The air grew colder. Frost began forming along the window glass, creeping like veins. Ranger barked furiously now, tugging at her sleeve. "Okay," Amelia whispered. "We're leaving." They burst through the door into the daylight. The wind had shifted, the kind of wind that carried sound strangely, and through it she heard faint music. A tune she recognized, her father's whistle. She turned slowly. The melody came from the woods behind the compound. Ranger growled, but she took a hesitant step forward anyway. "Dad!" The whistling stopped. A voice came from between the trees, calm, too calm. "Amelia. You shouldn't have come back." A figure emerged. At first, she thought it was a man. Same build, same coat her father had worn. But when he stepped into the light, she froze. His skin was pale gray like granite dust. His eyes, deep amber, glowed faintly beneath his brow. Her knees buckled. "Dad," he smiled faintly. "You shouldn't have touched the mountain." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought you were dead. I came to find you." "I am dead," he said softly, "but not gone." Ranger barked furiously, stepping between them, teeth bared. Thomas tilted his head. "You brought him back here? That's brave. Foolish, but brave." "What happened to you?" Amelia choked. "The mountain showed us what it was," he said, his tone eerily calm. "It's not a place, it's a living thing. We woke it up, Amelia. We thought we could study it, but it studied us instead." His eyes flickered with faint light. "It remembers every hand that ever touched its surface, every thought, every sound. We became part of it." Amelia shook her head violently. "No, I can fix this. I can get you out of here." He smiled sadly. "You can't rescue what's already become the stone." Behind him, more figures began, emerging from the forest, silent, their eyes glowing the same amber hue. "The Black Elk team," Thomas raised a hand. "Go back down the mountain, Leah, before it remembers you too." The ground beneath her boots trembled. Snow cascaded from branches. The low hum began again, deeper, angrier. Thomas's expression hardened. "It's waking. Run!" Ranger barked once, then twice, and lunged forward, biting Amelia's sleeve, yanking her back toward the trail. The hum rose to a roar. Cracks split the ground, orange light spilling through them like molten veins. "Dad!" she screamed. But he was already fading, his form flickering like a reflection on water. His final words echoed through the wind. "Find the heart, Amelia, before it finds you." Then he was gone. The light from below flared blindingly bright. Ranger barked, dragging her into motion. They ran, snow flying behind them, the sound of the mountain's pulse chasing them down. When they finally reached the lower forest, the summit behind them glowed faintly through the fog. Ranger collapsed beside her, panting. Amelia fell to her knees, tears freezing on her cheeks. She looked down at the old notebook again, at the last torn page she hadn't noticed before, in faint pencil, written in her father's unmistakable hand. "The mountain doesn't sleep. It listens. And it knows my daughter's name." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The wind that passed through the trees whispered something soft, something that almost sounded like her name. She stared back toward the summit. "Then I'll find your heart," she whispered, "before it finds me." Ranger whined softly, pressing against her side. Above them, Black Elk Peak pulsed faintly once more, like the slow, rhythmic beat of something vast and alive beneath the earth. The tunnel stretched downward into the mountain like a throat of stone, swallowing the beam of Amelia's flashlight in endless shadow. Ranger padded close at her heels, his fur brushing her leg now and then, his presence the only thing grounding her in that suffocating dark. The air grew colder, thicker. Drops of water echoed somewhere ahead, steady as a heartbeat. The further she descended, the less the tunnel felt like natural rock. Smooth walls emerged from the rough granite, carved, almost polished, as though shaped by tools. Along those walls ran faint carvings, spirals, triangles, symbols that looked almost like constellations. Amelia ran her hand over them. "Dad," she whispered, "what did you find down here?" The deeper she went, the more she could feel the mountain hum. It wasn't noise exactly, it was vibration, low and constant, like something buried deep below was alive, breathing slowly through the stone. Ranger stopped suddenly, his ears pricked forward, his growl low and uncertain. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. He took a step back, whining softly, eyes fixed on something ahead. Then she heard it too, a metallic clang, faint, deliberate, like a gate closing. Her pulse spiked. She swung her flashlight in the direction of the sound. The tunnel opened into a wide cavern. At the center stood a circular structure, metal, ancient, and wrong. It looked like an elevator shaft fused with rock, its walls covered in rusted panels and unfamiliar machinery. A faded logo was painted on one side, BESP Black Elk Survey Project. Her father's expedition. She moved closer, her boots crunching over brittle frost. Scattered near the base were fragments of notebooks, broken instruments, and a torn patch of canvas stamped with the same insignia. Ranger sniffed one of the torn bags, tail tucked. Amelia knelt beside him, her fingers brushing against the cold metal casing of a camera. It was an old survey model, one used by geologists to record underground formations. She pressed the playback button. Static filled the tiny screen, then a blurred image flickered to life. A man's voice, familiar, strained. "Day 12, the readings are off the charts. The rock isn't natural. I think it's the audio cut." Another burst of static. "If the hatch ever seals, tell Leah I—" Then silence. Her heart clenched. She recognized that voice, even distorted, even hollowed by time. It was him. "Dad," she whispered, trembling. Ranger whined and nudged her hand as if sensing her grief. She wiped her eyes, swallowed hard, and looked around again. The shaft's metal door was slightly ajar. A faint blue light seeped through the gap, pulsing like a heartbeat. Every instinct screamed turn back, but her father's voice echoed in her head. "Tell Leah I—" She had to know. Amelia pushed the door open. The air inside shimmered faintly, heavy with ozone. The walls were lined with metallic ribs, each pulsing faintly with blue light. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal holding something that did not belong in this world, an object smooth as glass, yet rippling beneath its surface like water. Her flashlight flickered wildly as she approached. Ranger barked once sharply, as if trying to warn her. She reached out a trembling hand. The air around it vibrated, bending light. Then the object pulsed, once, twice. Images flashed behind her eyes, too fast to make sense. Her father standing here touching the same light, the mountains splitting open, shadows pouring upward like smoke. And then his voice again. "Don't go beyond the summit." She yanked her hand back, gasping, stumbling into the wall. Ranger barked frantically, pacing in circles. What was that?" she breathed. Her vision wavered, her pulse pounding in her temples. Then beneath the hum of the machinery, another sound emerged, a faint hiss like air escaping. The door behind her was closing. "No, no, no!" She lunged for it, wedging her boot between the frame, but the heavy metal pressed tighter. Ranger squeezed through at the last second, barking madly. She yanked the flashlight free, scanning the chamber for another exit. The symbols on the walls were glowing faintly now. The same triangle with line symbol repeating in every direction, and in the center of it all, the glass-like orb began to spin. A low tone filled the room. Vibrating through her bones, Amelia backed away, dragging Ranger with her toward the shaft entrance. The orb pulsed faster, the light brightening until it hurt to look at. Then the hum became a roar. She clutched her father's old notebook against her chest. "We're leaving," she said, half to herself, half to Ranger. "Now." But as she turned toward the tunnel, she froze. Something was standing in the doorway. It was shaped like a person, but not quite. Too tall, too still. Its form flickered like static, translucent against the cavern wall. Her flashlight beam passed through it, and yet its face was clear enough to see. Her father's. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice cracked. The figure tilted its head, eyes hollow, mouth moving silently. Then a faint whisper reached her, "Don't open it again," and then it was gone. The light from the orb dimmed, the hum faded, and the chamber was silent once more. Amelia stood frozen, every muscle shaking. Ranger pressed against her leg, whining softly. She didn't move until the last echo of that whisper vanished. Then she turned and ran, through the tunnel, up the carved steps, her breath ragged, her flashlight beam shaking wildly on the walls. When she burst back into the cold daylight of the summit, the sky had shifted, a strange twilight hue despite it being noon. The wind howled across the rocks, carrying with it a faint metallic scent. Amelia collapsed to her knees, clutching Ranger's fur. What was that? She gasped, staring back at the open hatch. The blue glow below had faded completely, but she could still feel it, pulsing faintly under her feet. Ranger barked once, then twice, and turned toward the ridge, ears perked, staring into the distance as if he saw something she couldn't. She followed his gaze. Far below, at the base of the mountain, 3 dark figures were moving steadily upward, too deliberate to be hikers, too uniform to be random travelers. Each carried a pack marked with the same triangle insignia, the Black Elk. Project was not dead, and whatever her father had discovered down there, someone else wanted it back. The wind clawed at Amelia's face as she crouched behind a boulder. Ranger pressed close beside her. Below, 3 dark figures wound their way up the mountain trail. Their movements were deliberate, synchronized, too disciplined to be casual hikers. Each carried identical black packs, marked with the faded white triangle and vertical line of the Black Elk Survey Project. The same symbol from her father's jacket. "Damn it," Amelia whispered. Her breath fogged in the cold. How can they still be here? Ranger's low growl rumbled in his chest. She eased back, careful not to dislodge any loose stones. The men were still several hundred feet down, but the way they moved, silent, heads scanning the ridge, made her skin crawl. They were searching for her, and they knew exactly where to look. She tugged Ranger's collar gently. "Come on, boy. We're getting off this mountain." They slipped along the northern slope, staying in the cover of the rocks. The sky was bruised gray, clouds rolling fast across the peaks. Every sound, every crunch of snow beneath her boots felt like a gunshot in that silence. As they rounded a bend, a faint crack echoed from below, a rifle shot. The rock beside her shoulder exploded in a puff of dust and stone chips. "Go!" she shouted, shoving Ranger ahead. They bolted, boots skidding on frozen scree. Another shot rang out, ricocheting off the ridge. She dove behind a boulder, gasping, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear. Ranger barked, teeth bared, fur standing straight up. She peeked over the edge. One of the men had broken off from the others, climbing fast, using the boulders like he'd memorized the terrain. His face was hidden behind a black scarf, but she saw his eyes, flat, unblinking, efficient. He wasn't here to talk. She scanned the ground, searching for options. Ahead, the ridge curved into a drop, a narrow chute leading to the timberline far below. It was steep, maybe suicidal, but better than being cornered. "Ranger, stay close," she whispered, then sprinted toward the edge. The slope fell away beneath her like a frozen waterfall. Without hesitating, she slid onto it, the snow giving way in a cascade. The cold burned her palms as she tried to brake. Ranger leaped after her, barking wildly as they tumbled down. The world became a blur of white and stone and wind. When they finally came to a stop, she was half buried in a drift, lungs heaving, one boot missing. Her leg throbbed, maybe twisted, maybe worse, but she could move. Ranger shook himself off, covered in snow, and licked her face, whining softly. "I'm okay," she panted. "We're okay." They were below the tree line now, in a sparse forest of blackened pines. The air here was still unnervingly quiet. She limped to her feet, scanning upward. No movement. The men hadn't followed down, at least not yet. But they would. Amelia reached into her pack and pulled out her father's notebook. The last entry echoed in her mind. "If anyone finds this, don't go beyond the summit. The stones are not what they seem." She looked back up the slope. "You were trying to seal it, weren't you, Dad?" she whispered. "And they wouldn't let you." Ranger's ears perked suddenly. He turned east, toward a narrow path between the trees. A faint sound drifted on the wind, metal against metal. She followed cautiously, her flashlight flickering weakly. The path wound through the woods, past old mining debris and rusted cables. Then she saw it, a small corrugated steel hut, half collapsed under the snow. Its door hanging open, a survey station. Her pulse quickened. Inside, she found a makeshift lab, dusty, decayed, but still intact. Shelves lined with soil samples, equipment cases, and a radio covered in frost. A single camp cot lay in the corner, the fabric rotted through, and on the wall, pinned beneath yellowed plastic, was a map. It showed Black Elk Peak and the surrounding ridges, but beneath the surface was something else, a network of tunnels, spirals connecting to a large chamber labeled Chamber A9, Core Site. Her father's name was written beside it in fading ink. "Core Site," she murmured. "That's where he was." "That orb," Ranger barked once, startling her. He stood near the back wall, pawing at a metal chest. She knelt beside it, prying it open with her knife. Inside were stacks of notebooks, film canisters, and a sealed envelope marked for AC, her initials. Amelia's hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a letter, brittle with age. "Lita, if you find this, then you've come too far. What we uncovered wasn't mineral. It was something alive. Not biological, but not inert either. The mountain itself reacts. It remembers. The government pulled the funding when the readings became unstable, but they didn't leave. They sealed it, tried to bury the truth. If the chamber opens again, it won't stay contained. The summit isn't a peak, it's a lid. Leave, Leah, please." Dad, she dropped the letter, heart racing. "A lid?" she whispered. "A lid for what?" Before she could think further, a faint crunch of snow came from outside. Ranger growled. Amelia killed her flashlight and crouched low behind the cot, heart hammering. Through the cracks in the door she saw boots, black, heavy, military issue, stopping just outside the hut. A voice low and clipped spoke into a radio. "Target signal confirmed at the ridge." "Check the hut," another voice crackled in reply. "Recover the sample. Eliminate interference." Amelia's blood went cold. She scanned the hut frantically. There, a trapdoor beneath the cot, half buried under debris. She pulled it open as silently as she could. A dark shaft dropped into the ground. "Come on, Ranger," she whispered. He hesitated, ears back. Footsteps crunched closer. "Go," she urged, and Ranger slipped down into the hall. She followed, pulling the door closed just as the main door burst open. Light swept the room. Boots moved above her. She held her breath, pressed against cold dirt. "She's not here," one voice said. "Then she's close." "Move to the east ridge." Their footsteps retreated, fading into the wind. Amelia exhaled shakily. Ranger nudged her hand, tail thumping softly. She aimed her flashlight down the shaft. Wooden rungs descended into darkness. The air was warm, faintly metallic. As she climbed, the tunnel opened into another corridor, one that looked too smooth, too deliberate to be natural. Faint blue veins pulsed along the walls, the same as in the chamber above. "This goes deeper," she whispered, realization dawning. The mountains hollow. When she looked up, the tunnel was empty. The men were gone. Only scorch marks remained where they had stood, charred outlines on the rock, still glowing faintly blue. Ranger whined softly. Trembling, Amelia rose slowly, her body shaking. "We need to get out," she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew there was no simple way back. The mountain wasn't just stone anymore, it was awake. And as she turned toward the tunnel that led upward, the voice came again, whispering through the rock like a current. "You carry his memory. You carry the key." Her blood ran cold. The tunnel seemed to breathe. Every few seconds, Amelia could feel the air pulse softly against her face, warm one moment, icy the next. The glow from the veins in the rock dimmed, then brightened, like a living rhythm. Ranger pressed close to her side, tail tucked, his instincts prickling before her own. "Easy, boy," she murmured, stroking his neck. "We're leaving. We just have to find the way out." But as she turned down a branching corridor, a faint light flickered ahead, too steady, too artificial. She killed her flashlight and crouched. Through the shimmer of rising mist, she could make out the shape of a doorway, metallic, framed by cables and warning signs, authorized personnel only, Project Eidolon, clearance level 4. Her heart thudded. "Dad worked in this sector," she whispered. "Phase 3 containment breach. That's what he wrote about." Ranger whined softly. The door was slightly ajar. She nudged it open, its hinges screaming in protest. Beyond lay a chamber that could have been a museum of nightmares. Rows of glass pods lined the walls, each filled with a faint blue fog. Some were shattered, others intact, but inside a few she saw shapes, human shapes. Amelia's breath hitched. She stepped closer, wiping frost from the nearest glass. Inside was a man, his skin pale and translucent, veins glowing faintly with the same light as the mountain's veins. His eyes were open, they moved. Amelia stumbled back, gasping. The man's lips trembled as if trying to speak, but only a faint hum escaped, vibrating through the glass. "Oh my God," she whispered. They weren't just scientists. Her flashlight beams swept across a nearby table, papers scattered, a cracked monitor blinking with the same triangle symbol. She brushed aside the dust and read the heading on one of the files. Eidolon Core Study, Subject Synchronization Testing. Carson, T, her father's name. She sank onto a nearby stool, staring at the file in disbelief. Her father hadn't just found the thing beneath the peak, he'd been working on it. Ranger's low growl snapped her back. Footsteps echoed faintly through the corridor behind them. Amelia grabbed the folder, shoving it into her pack, and ducked behind one of the intact pods. The footsteps grew louder, 2 sets this time. Flashlights flickered through the crack in the door. "She must have come through here," a man's voice said. "Command said the signal spike came from Chamber C," another voice replied, rougher. "Then we'll flush her out. Orders her to secure the core. She's expendable." Ranger's growl deepened, his body tensing. Amelia held his collar tight, her pulse hammering in her ears. The first man stepped inside, sweeping his light across the room. It passed over her hiding place once, then again, slower this time. She clenched her teeth. The beam stopped just inches above her head. Then from the far end of the chamber, one of the pods cracked. The man whirled toward the noise, raising his weapon. What was that? The glass exploded outward in a burst of blue mist. The air filled with a high-pitched ringing. Something moved, something neither human nor machine. Amelia didn't wait to see. She yanked Ranger and sprinted for the back exit as shouts erupted behind her. The light dimmed, flickered, and then the sound of tearing metal filled the room. She ran until the tunnel forked again. One path led up toward faint daylight. The other led deeper, pulsing faintly with blue light. She hesitated, her lungs burning. "Up or down, boy?" Ranger whined, then trotted toward the lower path. "Down it is," she said, swallowing hard. The air grew warmer again, charged like static. The corridor opened into a massive vault lined with metal platforms. At its center, suspended by cables and machinery, was the orb she'd seen before, only larger, alive. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat, light rippling across its surface. She approached slowly, mesmerized. The air shimmered, images flickering faintly inside the orb, mountains, storms, faces she didn't recognize. Then a voice, softer now, filled her head, not through her ears, but from within her mind. "You carry his memory," she froze. "Who are you?" Ye gave what was his. "You are the remainder." Her father's notebook felt heavy in her pack. She pulled it out and opened it to the last page. Beneath the final entry, "The stones are not what they seem." She noticed faint indentations, like someone had written over it, and the ink had faded. She rubbed a pencil across the page. Words emerged. "The key is biological. Lineage required for access. Lineage—" She whispered. Her pulse stuttered. "You mean me?" The orb pulsed brighter, reacting to her voice. "You are the key. Memory carries the code. The lid was never meant to open. What happens if it does?" The light dimmed to a faint blue, like breathing. Then the mountain breathes again, and all beneath returns. Before she could respond, Ranger barked sharply, warning her. Voices echoed from the corridor again. The soldiers had survived whatever happened in the pod chamber. "Seal the vault," one shouted. "She's down here!" The orb's light intensified, bathing the room in blinding blue. Amelia shielded her eyes. "Stop, you'll bring them right to—" But the orb wasn't listening. The cables around it began to hum, vibrating like strings on an instrument. Suddenly, a beam of light shot outward, striking the wall, and the rock melted away, revealing another tunnel hidden behind. She stared in disbelief. The orb was showing her a way out. "Come on, Ranger," she shouted, sprinting toward it. Behind them, the door slammed open, gunfire erupting. Bullets tore through the air, sparking off the metal platforms. Ranger darted ahead, and Amelia followed, diving through the glowing passage just as the ceiling began to cave. The tunnel collapsed behind them, sealing off the vault. They tumbled into darkness again, the glow fading to a soft pulse behind them. Amelia lay there for a long moment, chest heaving, dust falling from the ceiling. Ranger licked her face once, as if asking if she was still alive. She laughed weakly, tears stinging her eyes. "Yeah, boy. Still kicking." When she looked up, she saw a ladder leading upward, rusted but intact. Above, faint daylight filtered through cracks in the rock. They climbed slowly, every rung groaning under her weight. Her hands were raw, her shoulders burning, but she kept moving. At last, she pushed aside a broken grate and hauled herself out into the open air. She gasped. They were back on the summit, near the fire tower. The hatch she'd opened 2 days ago lay half buried in snow again, as though the mountain had tried to close its wound. The sky above was dark, thunderheads roiling even though no storm had been forecast. Lightning flashed faintly within the clouds, blue, not white. Ranger stood beside her, staring into the distance. His tail wagged once, uncertain. Amelia turned back toward the hatch. Beneath her boots, the ground vibrated faintly. She knelt, pressed her palm to the cold metal. "You are the key." Her father's voice echoed in her mind again. She whispered to the wind, "Then I'll finish what you started." As the first drops of icy rain began to fall, Amelia sealed the hatch again, using every chain, bolt, and rock she could find. Then she carved something into the metal with her knife, just above the symbol, "Do not open." But as she stood and turned away, a faint whisper drifted from beneath the ground. "You cannot seal memory." The mountain trembled, so faintly she might have imagined it. Amelia took one last look at the tower, then started down the trail with Ranger. The storm rolled closer behind them, its light flickering blue across the peaks. Somewhere deep below, the orb pulsed once, slow, patient, waiting. The wind tore through the ridge like a living thing, clawing at Elise's coat as she trudged after Scout. The dog stayed close now, no longer wandering ahead, his ears low, his tail tucked slightly, as though he sensed something beyond the storm. The faint light from Elise's headlamp painted narrow tunnels of white mist before her, but even through the snow she could see it, the dark opening in the side of the summit wall. A cave. No, not a cave, she realized as she drew closer. The entrance had shape, structure, purpose. The doorway was framed by stones cut and stacked with precision, weathered by years of ice, yet still standing strong. Above it, an arch bore carvings that glimmered faintly beneath frost. Elise brushed her gloved hand against the design and gasped. It wasn't random chisel marks, it was writing Latin, Sanctum Custodis, she whispered, tracing the words. Sanctuary of the Guardian, Scout whimpered, pressing his body against her leg. Elise's pulse quickened. The old journal she'd found in the ranger's cabin, the one that had described missing hikers, the ones no one ever found, had mentioned something about a chapel hidden in the ice, a place older than the trails themselves. She pulled out her flashlight, switched it on, and stepped through. The air inside the passage was deathly still. The snow vanished the moment she crossed the threshold, as if the mountain itself wanted to keep the place preserved. Every sound she made, her boots crunching on stone, the drip of water echoing from above, felt unnaturally loud. Scout padded ahead, nose to the ground, tail trembling. The passage curved downward, deeper into the mountain. Faint streaks of something metallic glimmered on the walls, iron veins maybe, but as she leaned closer, her heart clenched. They weren't iron, they were streaks of rusted blood. Old, dark. Elise froze. She turned her flashlight toward the tunnel ahead, and that's when she saw it, the faint outline of a door at the end of the corridor. Wooden, reinforced by chains. Her breath fogged the air. She could see her reflection trembling in the frost that coated the planks. She reached for the latch, hesitated, then pushed. The door groaned open. The chamber beyond was massive, an underground cathedral carved directly from the mountain's heart. Massive pillars of ice and stone soared toward a vaulted ceiling. At the far end stood what looked like an altar, buried beneath a sheet of crystal frost. Candles, long since frozen in place, lined the steps. Elise's breath caught. Paintings, no, murals, covered the walls. They depicted men and women kneeling before the peak, offering objects toward the summit's jagged crown. In one scene, a figure cloaked in white stood over them all, a hand raised high, commanding the snow itself. It was both holy and horrifying. Scout let out a low growl. He wasn't looking at the murals. He was staring at the floor near the altar. Elise followed his gaze. Something glimmered beneath the ice. She knelt, brushing away snow with her glove until she saw it clearly. Metal. A circle of tarnished gold. A locket. Heart-shaped. She blinked. "What are you doing here?" She pried it loose from the ice, flipping it open with trembling hands. Inside, beneath a thin layer of frost, was a photograph, two faces smiling at her through time. Her mother. And her father, the same picture that had been lost in the fire 15 years ago. Elise dropped the locket as if burned. The sound echoed through the frozen hall. "How?" she whispered. Scout barked once, sharp and urgent. Something shifted behind her. The temperature plummeted. Her breath turned to white mist that hung thick in the air. The candles, frozen though they were, flickered faintly, one after another, as if something invisible moved among them. Elise turned slowly toward the murals. The painted figures were no longer still. Their eyes seemed darker, deeper, watching. And then the whisper came. "Elise." She stumbled back, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Who's there?" "Elise." It was a woman's voice this time, soft, distant, echoing like wind over a glacier. Her mother's voice. Elise's throat tightened. "No, no, that's not possible." Scout barked again, circling her protectively. Fur bristling. "Elise, my brave girl," the voice said again, closer now, warmer. "You've found what they wanted hidden." Tears burned Elise's eyes. "Mom, what is this place?" The shadows around the altar thickened. The frost began to crackle and split, and beneath it a faint golden light pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's where they kept the truth," the voice said, almost mournful. "Where they buried what was never meant to be found." Elise crouched, heart racing. The truth about what? The air grew heavy. A sudden rumble echoed through the chamber. Cracks spidered up the walls. Then came the sound she would never forget, the low, deep growl of something alive moving beneath the ice. Scout snarled, lunging toward the altar. The ice split open, revealing a massive shape just beneath the surface, a creature's outline frozen in eternal stillness. It wasn't human, a figure tall and sinewy, its face obscured by frost. Its arms were bound by chains, its eyes sealed shut beneath shards of crystal. Elise staggered back, horrified. What is that?" Her mother's voice whispered again, now trembling. "They called it a guardian. But it was never meant to protect." The light from the creature's chest grew brighter. The chains began to twitch. Scout barked furiously, pulling Elise toward the tunnel. But she couldn't move. Her legs refused to obey. The mountain itself seemed to vibrate as if it were breathing. "Elise!" the voice cried now, breaking apart into echoes. "You must seal it again. The locket! Put it back!" Elise fumbled for the locket, hands shaking. She stumbled toward the altar, but the ground split beneath her. Ice shattered. A blast of cold air surged upward, knocking her backward. For a moment, she saw it clearly. The creature's eyes snapping open, they glowed the color of dying embers. Then everything went white. When Elise awoke, she was outside. Snow drifted down gently from a pale dawn sky. The mountain was silent again. Scout lay beside her, breathing steadily, his fur crusted with frost. The entrance to the chapel was gone, buried beneath an avalanche of stone and snow. Elise sat up slowly, clutching the locket in her hand. It was warm now, pulsing faintly against her palm. She stared at the mountain, heart pounding. "What, did I just wake up?" Scout lifted his head, eyes meeting hers. There was something new in his gaze, something solemn, almost human. And far above them, from deep within the snow-covered peak, came a faint sound, a heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic waiting. The morning sky over Silver Peak was deceptively serene. Frost-glazed branches sparkled in weak sunlight as Elise staggered to her feet, every muscle in her body screaming. Scout stood beside her, trembling but alert, eyes fixed on the snow-packed slope that had swallowed the chapel whole. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then faintly, beneath the wind's hush, came that sound again, steady and unmistakable. Thump! 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 The heartbeat of the mountain. Elise pressed the warm locket to her chest, her breath misting in the frigid air. "Mom," she whispered, "what did you do here?" Scout barked once sharply and started up the ridge toward the collapsed section. His paws sank deep, his nose sweeping over disturbed snow. Elise followed, though dread tugged at her ribs with every step. As they climbed, she began to notice things that hadn't been there before. The snow wasn't pure white anymore. It shimmered faintly with threads of gold and crimson, like veins of something alive running just beneath the surface. The temperature rose as she approached the wreckage, until frost dripped from her hair and melted into her collar. Steam curled from cracks in the snow, and then she saw it, a narrow fissure glowing faintly beneath the drift. But Scout had already squeezed through, vanishing into the light. Elise dropped to her knees, scraping at the snow with her gloves until she widened the gap. Warm, damp air rolled up from below, carrying a scent she couldn't quite name. Part metal, part earth, part something that felt ancient. She slid inside. The tunnel descended at a steep angle. She used the ice pick from her belt to steady herself, boots skidding on slick stone. Her headlamp flickered, then steadied, illuminating smooth walls that pulsed faintly, as though veins carried light through them. Scout's faint paw prints led her deeper. "Elise." She froze. The voice was faint but clear, her mother's again echoing along the stone. "Mom," she called, her voice trembling. "Elise, don't let it rise." Her flashlight flickered again. "What's rising? What is it?" But the voice was gone. She descended another 20 feet before the tunnel opened into a massive cavern. Steam drifted in lazy curls from fissures in the floor, and in the center of the chamber was a pool, dark, glassy, and glowing faintly red from beneath the surface. Scout stood at the edge. Tail low, ears pinned, Elise stepped closer, her heart hammering. The pool wasn't water. It was liquid rock, magma pulsing like a vein. But there was something in it, something beating. She realized with horror that the heartbeat she'd been hearing wasn't echoing through the air. It was resonating from this molten pool, embedded. In the center of the magma was an enormous shape, encased in translucent stone, a figure, the same one she'd seen in the chapel, only now its form was clearer, its face visible beneath layers of molten crystal. It was human-like but impossibly tall, skin as pale as the peak itself, eyes shut in sleep. Around its neck hung a pendant identical to the locket she held. Elise took a step forward. "What are you?" she whispered. The locket in her hand pulsed once. The magma rippled in response. Scout whined and backed away, his nails scraping stone. Then, without warning, the entire cavern shook. Cracks laced across the pool's surface. The glow intensified until Elise had to shield her eyes. The creature's eyes snapped open. She turned toward the tunnel. Someone was shouting. A flashlight beam pierced the steam. A man appeared, heavy parka, ranger's insignia half buried in frost. His face was ghost white with fear. "Good God," he gasped. "It's real!" Elise blinked. "Who are you?" "Dr. Keene," he said, panting. "Your parents worked with me 15 years ago before they vanished. We tried to seal this chamber, but—" His gaze fell to the glowing pool. "We failed." She took a step back, the heat searing her skin. "You knew about this?" He nodded grimly. "It isn't just a mountain. It's a containment site. Your mother's research found it sleeping, something left behind by the first settlers who worshipped it as a god. They thought it guarded them from storms, but it fed on their lives. Every offering, every death in the blizzards, it grew stronger." Elise's stomach turned. "Then why hide it?" "Because we couldn't destroy it," Keene said, his voice breaking. "The energy is self-regenerating. The locket, your mother made those as keys. It's linked to its containment field." The locket pulsed again, brighter now, and from the magma came a deep, shuddering exhale. Keene's eyes widened. "It's waking!" The ground split beneath them. Elise grabbed the nearest ledge as molten cracks spidered toward her boots. Scout barked frantically, darting between them. "Elise, listen to me!" Keene shouted over the roar. "You can't run. The key must be used to reseal it." "How?" "You have to sacrifice something it recognizes." Her breath caught. "Sacrifice?" Keene's face twisted with grief. "A bond, a life bound to yours. It feeds on connection. It must take something love to sleep again." Her heart lurched. She looked at Scout. "No," she whispered. "No, I won't." The creature stirred, the magma boiling violently. A sound like 1,000 voices echoed through the cavern, pleading, wailing. "Elise!" Keene cried, reaching for her. "You have to choose!" Scout pressed against her leg, looking up with trusting eyes. Elise sobbed, "No, please, no!" The locket blazed white-hot. The air filled with light. Then suddenly, Scout stepped forward on his own. He barked once, sharp, resolute. Then he leapt into the light. "Scout!" Elise screamed. The world exploded. When she came to, the cavern was silent. The magma had hardened to black stone. The heartbeat was gone. The figure was sealed again, eyes closed, encased in fresh crystal. Elise staggered forward, the locket still glowing faintly in her hand. But Scout was gone. Only his collar remained, half buried in the cooling stone. She fell to her knees, tears freezing on her cheeks. Keene approached slowly, his face ashen. "He saved you," he murmured. "He gave it what it needed." Elise's hand shook as she clutched the collar to her chest. "He was my family." "I know," Keene said quietly, "but he may not be gone. Not truly. The key binds what it takes. That's why your parents left theirs behind. They used their lives to seal it the first time. Her gaze shot to him. You mean Scout is part of it now? Part of the seal, he said. Protecting it from within. Elise rose unsteadily, staring at the frozen figure one last time. The faintest shimmer glowed near its chest, two small points of light, side by side, pulsing like twin hearts. She turned away as she climbed back. Through the tunnel, she felt the mountain exhale once more, this time not with menace, but with peace. The snow outside had stopped falling, and the sky over Silver Peak glowed a soft gold. Elise stood on the ridge, clutching Scout's collar and the locket. You did good, boy, she whispered. Rest easy. For a moment the wind curled around her like a sigh, and she swore she heard the faint jingle of tags, the soft patter of paws. Then it was gone. But in the distance, high above the summit, a single pawprint appeared in the untouched snow, shimmering briefly before fading into the light. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.